In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
It's a great pleasure to welcome an author whose storytelling blends gritty noir, rich historical detail, and unforgettable characters. Stephen G. Eoannou grew up in Buffalo, New York, where he fell in love with Hardy Boy mysteries and the black and white world of Humphrey Bogart films. That early passion turned into a lifelong pursuit of history and narrative, earning him degrees from SUNY Buffalo, Miami University, and Queens College of Charlotte. He is the author of the acclaimed short story collection Muscle Cars and the award-winning novel Yesteryear. And he's back with something new, something sharp, shadowy, and undeniably compelling. His latest release, After Pearl, marks the start of the Nicholas Bishop mystery series, and it's everything a lover of classical noir could hope for. Steve Eoannou, welcome back to the conversation. Give us the backstory on After Pearl.
After Pearl, I call it my pandemic novel because I wrote it during the pandemic. It has absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic, but I got the idea right before lockdown. And I had watched a detective movie, a fairly recent one on Netflix. And the detective, the main character, was like the stereotypical detective. He had a greater moral compass than the police or the judicial system. He got all the girls. He was the smartest guy in the room. And he was really boring and annoying to me. So the next day, I was sitting at a bar by myself, just nursing a bourbon, just stewing about that movie. And I go, man, I want to write a detective that's different than all that. And out of the blue, Norman Mailer says that writing's a spooky art because ideas and sentences, they come to you out of nowhere. I'm sitting at this bar and I thought of my mom's friend, a guy named Mickey, and they called him Mickey Squilicki. And Squilicki in Greek means insect or bug because he was just like this shifty, kind of weaselly guy. And Mick I haven't thought about this guy in 30 years. I could barely picture what he looks like. And when Mickey was in World War II, he was in San Francisco waiting to be deployed to the Pacific. And he got drunk and he got hit by a cab. And his injuries were so severe that when he recovered, they didn't send him overseas. They just sent him back home with a medical discharge. And my mom was convinced that he stepped in front of that cab on purpose to get out of being deployed. Out of the blue, I have this memory. I go, that's my detective. And I go, why would he was drunk, right? As I sip my bourbon sitting alone in the bar. He's an alcoholic, right? And he doesn't remember if he stepped in front of that cab on purpose or not. And now he's injured, right? So now he can't be the big, tough detective, right? He walks with a cane and he's battling alcoholism. And he's everything opposite of that movie detective I saw the night before. And that's where Nicholas Bishop came from. Out of the blue.
So the paradigm that we give our characters flaws is something you took to heart in a big way.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to make him struggling with alcoholism. I wanted to have him a physical disability. Instead of being a lady killer, he's got this unrequited crush on his secretary that he either fired or she quit. It's not actually clear to him. He's broke. He's got a one-eyed dog that doesn't know where it came from. He's just really struggling. And it's opposite of any type of detective that's really cool and got it together. Bishop's at the opposite end of the spectrum.
Take us through the creative process that put this whole story together.
I don't write from an outline. I'm a seat-of-the-pants writer. Tobias Wolff said writing a novel is like driving a car at night with the headlights off, and my headlights were off and the sunglasses were on, and there was probably a 6-pack of beer on the front seat because I didn't know where I was going with this. So as Bishop runs into a dead end, it's probably because I ran into a dead end. That red herring, yeah, that was probably my mistake plotting the novel out until I found my way. So while Bishop is trying to solve the murder and put together the last 5 days of his life that's missing because of an alcoholic blackout, I was trying to figure out those 5 days as well. So it was really writing completely in the dark, to be honest with you. But I had the premise, right? It begins with him waking up on the floor of his hotel room. And up to this point, he's lost everything before the novel begins because of his drinking. He's lost his detective agency. He's lost his secretary who he's in love with. He can't find his car. And he wakes up after a 5-day bender, and the police are looking for him, and 2 shots have been fired from his gun. That's how the book opens. So I knew that I had to figure out what happened during those 5 days. And Bishop didn't know, and I didn't know, and the one-eyed dog wasn't talking, so we had to figure it out together.
Stephen G. Eoannou is our guest. We're talking about After Pearl, his latest and the start of the Nicholas Bishop mystery series. What is the enduring appeal of noir?
I don't know. I know for me, it was something I grew up watching on The Late Show. It was something that my dad would sit down and watch with me. I wrote an article, I haven't placed it yet, about watching The Maltese Falcon for the first time with my dad. I was, 13 years old or something, and I was so mad at the ending. I go, what do you mean it's not real? I mean, that's not the way endings are supposed to work. So I just grew up with that, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm hoping that this book finds an audience who still likes it. My idea was to put a soft-boiled detective in a hard-boiled world and see what happens. So that was another one of my premises that I was operating from. But I wanted to keep in all those noir elements, the kind of darkness, the shadowiness of not only the settings, but of the characters. And it's 1942, so let's put some Nazis into the plot. So a lot of that's going on in the book.
And I really liked his assistant. Tell me about how you created Gia.
Gia, everyone loves Gia. Gia's character came really from a direct criticism from my previous novel, Yesteryear. When I was trying to find an agent for it, and Yesteryear is about Franz Stryker, and he's the man who created the Lone Ranger. And Yesteryear centers around how did he come up with the idea for the Lone Ranger and coming up with the pilot for it. And along the way, he's got to solve a caper and a gypsy's curse and all this stuff's going on. And one of the criticisms when an agent turned me down was there wasn't a strong female character. There was 2 strong male characters, Stryker and John Barrett, who was the original Lone Ranger when it premiered in Buffalo in the late 30s. And I wanted to and that was done on purpose. I wanted them to be like the Lone Ranger and Tonto. The 2 of them were solving this crime. And I go, okay, there's not a real strong female character in that book, but I'm going to give you one in the next book. And so Gia came from this idea of having a very strong female character who wants to be a private eye, which was pretty rare in 1942. First generation Italian American. So she was raised with like old world and old country morals, and this is the role of women. So I wanted to make her about 30 years ahead of her time. I wanted to make her a strong, independent woman who wants to be successful in a man's occupation at that time, dominated occupation at that time. And she wasn't going to take anything from anybody. She was going to give it back as much as she could take. And she was super fun to write because she wasn't the femme fatale that needed rescuing. She does the rescuing. And in a lot of ways, she's the better detective than Bishop is because Bishop is so crippled by his alcoholism. So I think they make a fun kind of duo to write about and play off each other.
And there is a risk when you build such a powerful secondary character that they'll take over the story. How did you avoid that?
I don't think I have because everyone wants to talk about Gia and my publisher says more Gia. So maybe there'll be a book before Pearl where I explore Gia's life. But yeah, everyone who read it loves Gia. They want more of Gia. So she will be taking on more of a role, I think, as the series progresses.
You come from a proud Greek heritage, and part of that, when you are a fish out of water in a new place like America, is figuring out how to make your dreams come true and how to fit in. Was that on your mind as you were writing, Gia?
Maybe a little bit, trying to bridge that gap from her parents' generation and their ideals and what it's like to be in America coming out of a depression when things are opening up. And now there's a war and there's more opportunities for women to work outside the house. I was definitely thinking about that. And Gia, instead of working at Curtis Wright or one of the other defense plants, she answers an ad to be a secretary at the Bishop Detective Agency. And that's how she and Bishop cross paths. So not what, you would expect from somebody, but definitely I had in mind the lower west side of Buffalo, where I live now, was primarily the Italian section of town up until 20, 30 years ago. Even though there's still an Italian presence here, it's more Hispanic now. But I was thinking she would have come from this neighborhood, right? She would have been that tough Italian girl that grew up on 7th Street, where I live now. So that was definitely on my mind, thinking about what would my neighborhood be like 40 years ago? What would those first generation women be like during that time? It all just comes together somehow. I don't understand it. I don't know if any writer really does. Maybe the greats do, but you just get this mishmash of ideas and somehow it all comes together in the stew.
We're in conversation with Steve Eoannou. The book is After Pearl. His website is SGEOANNOU, SGEoannou.com. There's a lot of action in After Pearl, but also a surprising amount of emotional depth. How do you strike a balance when you're writing?
Yeah, it's more feel. There's not a formula that I know of, but I know that I wanted to make Bishop much different than those other detectives that were more one-dimensional. You think of a great character, the Continental Op, but it was just work with him, and that's all you knew was his work life. I wanted something different. I wanted someone who had, all of us, issues in their life that they're dealing with, whether it's alcoholism, whether it is an absent parent, whether it is a mentor that has left them. So Bishop, on top of his alcoholism, has a lot of abandonment issues. He's got a lot of relationship issues, and he hit rock bottom. And this is Bishop trying to get back to what he had before After Pearl even started. And he really doesn't get that back until the second and even the third novel that I'm thinking of. So it is him crawling back to where he was, trying to overcome this. So that kind of gives the emotional depth that I was really trying for, but merging it with a mystery thriller.
You are known for your pitch perfect dialogue. How do you create such great conversations?
I didn't get my first book published for 30 years. It was 30 years of rejection. But even during those dark decades, I was naturally good at dialogue as maybe the one thing I did well for a long time. I don't know why. Maybe eavesdropping on my older siblings when I was a kid, eavesdropping on my parents, but they'd always switch to Greek once I was in the room or behind a chair or something. So I wouldn't be able to understand what they're saying. But as I've gotten older, I really have tried to even fine tune it more. And my editor at the Santa Fe Writers Project, Adam Sigourney, he has really helped me. He's edited both Yesteryear and After Pearl. And this summer, we're going to start on the second book in the Bishop series called The Falling Woman. And so he's really helped me tighten that dialogue up a bit more. And I really enjoy writing dialogue. And a lot of times when there's a scene, I'll just write the dialogue out almost like it's a play with very limited narrative, very limited tags or gestures, just getting the dialogue down on paper. And then I'll go back and layer in those other things to make the scene a complete scene. But dialogue tends to write itself pretty quickly for me for whatever reason.
It's tailor-made for the screen. Who would you like to see play your two protagonists?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I don't have any idea for Gia. I don't know. I know it when I saw her, but I don't have any idea. Then I was thinking, who was it? Austin Butler, is that his name? He was in Elvis. Is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
I thought, no, he's too handsome. He wouldn't take this role.
He probably would, just to change up, right?
I don't know. I mean, who else is the guy who played Bob Dylan? I can never pronounce his last name. He might be good. I don't know. I think maybe if Cillian Murphy from Peaky Blinders, he's about 50 and Bishop's about 30. Maybe if he was a little younger, I could see him doing it. I don't know, but I would love to see it on the screen. But Gia is a mystery. I don't know who could play Gia.
Well, when I saw the one-eyed dog in the story, I was thinking about your animal. Are there any other autobiographical pieces that have slipped into After Pearl?
Like I said, I wrote this. I wrote it during the lockdown. So I'm in a big house with a little one-eyed dog, just the two of us. And I just looked at her one morning and said, "You're going to be in the book." And she's cocked her head. She goes, "Oh, all right." So yeah, I had to have a one-eyed dog in the book. Whatever slip in, there's a lot. The New Genesee restaurant in Thomas, spelled Tamis, is my grandfather and my grandfather's restaurant. I never met my paternal grandfather. He died before I was born, but I grew up hearing stories from my dad, who was a great storyteller, about how living above the restaurant and this was in a part of town here in Buffalo where all the Greek immigrants were, because the church was right down the street on Oak Street, and the Greeks all lived around the church. And my dad lived above in my grandfather's restaurant, and he would stories about the characters that would come into the restaurant. A lot of them were in yesteryear. Lefty the dog thief was my dad's friend, and he was a dog thief, and he hung out with my dad. And so I never been to that restaurant, but I picked it and my grandfather and made him a character, a reoccurring character, because he and the restaurant have been in all my novels. And I picked that old neighborhood where my dad grew up with to set it. So a lot of that has infiltrated the story. And I guess a lot of Bishop. I think if you look at my two previous novels, they were based on real people. Al Nussbaum and Rook, who was a bank robber in the 1960s, and then Stryker, who wrote The Lone Ranger in the 1930s. So of those, and this is my third book, of those three main characters, I think there's more of me in Bishop than in those other two main characters, because those other two were based on real life people that I read their biographies and history. But more of me is in Bishop than the other characters, I think.
You're restoring a Second Empire Victorian home. Does that hands-on, detail-focused work bleed into your writing process?
The only two areas of my life where I am very detail-oriented and conscious of are my house and my writing. The rest of my life is just flying by the seat of my pants. But the details, restoring a home and then furnishing it, and it's the little things that just fit perfectly into a corner or on a shelf like it was made to be in the house. I love those types of discoveries. And it's that type of approach that I put into my scenes and the description of the scenes, that type of detail. But my other areas of my life, it is not that detail oriented.
It's not that important. You
Yeah,
focus on the stuff that is important.
Yeah. Yep.
Looking back at Muscle Cars, yesteryear, and now After Pearl, how do you think your storytelling has evolved?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. And no one's ever asked me that. So you win. How has it evolved? I think my writing has become much richer in detail. I think it has become more sparse at the sentence level. And I think the biggest thing is I've got a better understanding of what story is than I did. The other big thing is nothing on paper or nothing the reader could see, but now I have a confidence that I'm going to figure it out. I don't know how After Pearl is going to end when I started it, but I'm going to figure it out. And I got stuck in a couple places, but I have that confidence now that I didn't have back when I was a younger writer. And back then I would probably have just stopped writing, so I just need to figure this out first. Now I just keep going thinking, I'm going to figure it out. I will get the idea. The muses will speak to me. It will all work out at the end. And my plots are complicated. I have a lot of balls in the air that have to come together. And so far, knock on wood, so far I think they have. But Pearl comes out May 1st, so I guess I'll find out when the reviews start rolling. And
what do you hope that readers will take away from the experience of After Pearl?
I hope at the first level, they think it's a good story. It's a good read. because I wrote this, as I said, during the lockdown, and I wrote it for myself. I didn't have any intention of this being, I was hoping to be published, but certainly I wasn't thinking series. And I blogged about this. I said, we read to escape. I am writing to escape during this pandemic because I didn't lose my day job. So my 9 to 5 never changed. But after 5 o'clock, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't see anybody. So I created this world where I had some control, and I wrote a book that I would have liked to have read, basically, with no idea if this would find an audience. And that was like a great gift that I stumbled across. It was just a lot of fun. It got me through the lockdown, and I came away with a book. And I feel very blessed because a lot of the creative people I know during the lockdown, they either did what I did and immersed themselves in work, or the other half were just so paralyzed by how scary it all was and being the isolation that we're all under that they didn't create anything. So I feel very fortunate that I was able to keep producing during those COVID years.
You gave us a tantalizing hint to the next book in the Nicholas Bishop Mystery Series, Falling Woman. What can you tell us about that?
That book is going to come out in 2027. It is the second in the Nicholas Bishop series. It is done. And as I said, the editing process is going to start this summer. And so you'll start hearing me self-promoting that probably next week.
The website is SGEOANNOU.com. The new book is After Pearl, and it's written by our special guest, Steve Eoannou. Steve, always great to welcome you to the conversation.
Oh, Terry, it's always fun talking to you and hanging out.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.